We're back.
We're back.
Season's officially started. Iowa State. Not a great start.
Is 0-1.
0-1. You know what I thought of? The undefeated record they had at home.
I know. Well, the undefeated record they had at home, and they had it got broken, but like the undefeated match winning streak that they had, dating, like they had last year that dated back to the year before. Like they won I don't remember what it was, 15 matches in a row. And now we start off this season with a loss, which hurts.
It does hurt. And probably very confusing for casual fans. Just to be like, wait, what?
How? Iowa State was ranked 6th. Stanford was 20th or 21st or whatever.
Yeah, I think they were 20. Oh, God. Well, a lot of good stuff to still discuss. I was not there, unfortunately. I was in Kansas City for football, which was
also not good.
Also not great. That was really not a great time. But we don't need to talk about my weekend in Kansas City. Talk to me about Hilton. How was Hilton?
Hilton itself was very good. They attempted a gold out.
Oh, yeah.
Which did not happen.
I was going to say, from the TV, from the broadcast, I could tell it did not happen.
There were people wearing gold. It was
Dresser
not a
had
gold
his
out.
gold sweater
yes,
on.
he did. And it looked, again, Dresser's sweater game is top notch. That's the takeaway from the match. No. But the crowd, besides the attempted gold out, was very good. They're very engaged fans. I think Andy Stubblefield, the wrestling sports information director, shout out to Andy, who we know is listening.
It's our guy.
He said there was about 4,000 people there. The lower bowl looked pretty full. It sounded loud during big moments. So the crowd itself was very good. You could tell the crowd in some of the matches that didn't go Iowa State's way were trying to will guys to get over the hump, because there were opportunities for guys like Zach Redding and Aiden Riggins to get over the hump. And you could tell the crowd was trying to will them to do that. But a couple things, desperate shots late in matches ended up not working out for Cyclones on Friday.
I think when I looked at this duel really in a larger lens, obviously Iowa State should not have lost. I know that we can sit and rationalize, and I think that's the only critique we've ever gotten on this podcast, is that maybe we don't always go as hard into them when apparently we should. But this is one of those scenarios where I don't think Iowa State should have lost. But if there had to have been a loss, my biggest critique is the amount of points that were given up. The bonus points. That's my problem. Zach Redding, why'd you get pinned?
How did you get pinned?
That's crazy.
He pinned himself because he went for a takedown and he got in on the guy's leg, and then he tried to roll through it for some reason, ended up on his back, and the guy's like, "Oh, thank you for putting yourself on your back. I'll pin you now."
Yeah, that's a lot of points to give up. And Garrett Grice, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily had specific expectations for him, but I didn't have a 10-0 major decision loss for him. So I think that was my biggest critique. What was it, 2 seasons ago? That was the biggest preach of the season, was bonus points are going to win you duels at the end of the day. And you just handed this to Stanford on a platter.
Yep. Yeah, there were at least three bonus point results against Iowa State that really determined the duel. Zach Redding should not have gotten pinned. Garrett Grice should not have gotten beat by major decision, and Aiden Riggins should not have gotten beat by major decision. Aiden Riggins was down 4-1 in that match against Lorenzo Norman in the third period. And you could, I guess, credit to Riggins for going out there and shooting shots and trying to get after it. But almost similar to Redding, he went on a shot, and Stanford's very good at scrambling. So give them credit for that, I suppose. But in the scramble, Riggins ended up on his back, got taken down, got near fall points against him, loses by major decision. So if he completes that takedown attempt, it's now tied 4-4, and maybe they go to a sudden victory and we see who wins in that one. So like you just said, you can't be giving up bonus points in a dual meet this close when you're wrestling 4 backups, whatever it is. Which is not a recipe for success against a relatively quality team like Stanford. So, I mean, just to give a little bit of perspective on the quality team of Stanford, Tyler Knox from Stanford, who beat Garrett Grice by major decision, beat Drake Ayala of Iowa. the next day. Aiden Valencia at 141 beat Ryder Block. You go down to Lorenzo Norman, who beat Aiden Riggins. Lorenzo Norman beat number 6 Nelson Brands. So like, they're not good losses. There's ways Iowa State should have won this. But Stanford is also a good team. So you can't be losing. My greater point, I'm not trying to make excuses for Iowa State. My greater point is you can't, when you're in a close match, you need to make sure you're not losing by major decisions if you're going to lose.
Right.
But really, Aiden Riggins, I could argue, probably should have won that match. If he completes a couple more of his takedown attempts, he wins that match. Zach Redding was just very frustrating for me.
Maybe Matt Rust?
Maybe Matt Rust. I don't know. But like when we saw him as a true freshman during that COVID year, I was like, this guy's a guy. He's good. And it just seems like he hasn't gotten any better, which is unfortunate. Maybe he's dealt with injuries. Maybe he just peaked early and he is what he is. But yeah, there were some disappointing results in the Stanford dual meet where it's like, you know what? A little bit savvier wrestling probably wins you that dual meet. And Kevin Dresser kind of said as much today. It was the first match of the season, and this was Stanford's third match of the season. So like, they had wrestled a few matches. They felt what it was like again to get back out on the mat. And this was Iowa State's first time. So yeah, again, I'm not trying to make excuses for Iowa State, but it is what it is.
I think ultimately, kind of like we were discussing before we started recording, yeah, we're learning things about Iowa State. We're learning things about very specific guys. But once we get to Iowa, we're going to be having a completely different conversation. Yep. So the results of Stanford should not dictate how we're going to feel moving forward. I know some people's critiques, and this came from fans that I know are like locked in, the depth. So what does it say about the depths that we've been tooting, for a few weeks now? I still don't think it's cause for panic or concern just because this isn't the starting lineup. Key guys are missing from it for various reasons that we can get into. But yeah, it sucks. Like we said, it kind of killed the vibe there with the win streak, but we'll be having a very different conversation here soon. So if anything, I would just try and look at things like Evan Bachmann, Christian Carroll,
Anthony Echemendia.
Yeah, Anthony Echemendia. What a bright spot in the lineup. And then Daniel Herrera, who, assuming things go as we expect, Younger will be back. He'll take his spot back and Daniel can redshirt. But what an exciting look at what's to come after Younger leaves. So, but yes, Anthony now has a top 10 win under his belt. He won 11-5. He was down, I think it was 4. And I was like, I ain't worried.
No.
Not at all. And he did exactly what I thought he would. He's just so, I don't know, poised.
Yes, very
He's
poised.
just so fun to watch. I find no heart rate issues during Anthony's matches. I'll tell you that. What did you see from him?
He's just an exciting wrestler because we've seen him do those big throws, kind of a la Younger Bastida. Where he's throwing guys literally on their heads. But he's also just so technically savvy. And I think that's more of what we saw against Jaden Abbas, number 10, Jaden Abbas. He just so positionally sound. He'll hand fight you, get his opening, get that single leg, put you down. And that's also the fun part about Anthony is Jaden tried to do the same thing as the other Stanford wrestlers, where if you got in on their legs, Iowa State had no problem getting in on Stanford wrestlers' legs. They had problems finishing. The fun part about Anthony is A, he's so strong, and B, he's so technically sound that even when Jaden tried to roll through or dive at an ankle or anything like that, Anthony's like, no, why would you try that against me? Because he could just manhandle and be like, no, I'm taking you down. Don't try that. So yeah, I'm with you. Anthony, again, like you said, he was down, but same page as you. No, I wasn't worried. It's like, oh, I mean, that's unfortunate that he got taken down, but he'll be fine. And he was totally fine. He almost won by major decision. So yeah, Anthony's just one of those guys that super fun to watch. I never really knew what to expect from him going into last season, just because you knew he had some freestyle accolades, and like even when he did wrestle at Ohio State, like the couple times he didn't look great. So I was like, is he going to be a guy? And then he comes out and he's like, oh, okay, yeah, he's a guy. And then this season he just picks up right where he left off. He is I think he's always been better on bottom than Younger has. And again, even in Jaden Abbas, I'm like, okay, he'll get up. And he did. He had no problem with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Anthony's just super fun to watch. He'll be, and we knew this going into this year, he'll be a staple in this lineup and one that you, in almost every single dual meet, expect to get at bare minimum 3 points from, likely bonus points. So really fun guy.
Consistent guy. I think that's what's fun. Is like lineups change. We had David, right? David was all reliable. We knew what he was going to do. And honestly, that's a good way to put it. It reminds me of how I felt watching David. I never was stressed watching David. He was always entertaining. He so technically sound. So it was really fun technical wrestling. And losses came as a complete shock. And that's exactly how I would describe Anthony. So.
Anthony's not quite to the level of David.
Right.
But I'm with you 100% that against, 95% of the country, quite literally, I'm incredibly confident with Anthony Anchimendia. And then the other 5%, be like, hey, we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Any other takeaways?
Other takeaways are, we'll touch on Evan Bachmann because Dresser talked about him again today. Evan Bachmann looked really good. I was very happy with how he wrestled. Obviously, we saw him a couple times when he was at Utah Valley. He did beat Younger Bastida one time. I think he's like 1-3 and 1-4 against Younger, but he did win one time.
Yeah.
So you knew he had that ability in him. But he's just this short little fire hydrant of a guy. He looks like he's built like a fire hydrant.
Way to put it.
And he gets after you. He hand fights really hard. He does have a good high crotch, which he mentioned. And the fun part about him is he got, I think it was 3 takedowns in 45 seconds at the end of the Stanford match to give Iowa State bonus points and to give them an opportunity to even win the dual meet. Obviously, Iowa State fell short, but without those bonus points, they could not have been done. So he went out there for the team, got bonus points, got a major decision, looked pretty good doing it. And the fun part about him too is, and we talked about this during media availability today, which is a Tuesday, him and Christian Carroll, who is another thing that I would mention for the Stanford dual meet. Christian Carroll is a guy. Like, he is good. He will be very good. Very excited for him. Christian Carroll and Evan Bachmann, it sounds like, wrestle very frequently in the wrestling room. And I love the dynamic of the number 1 pound for pound recruit in the nation, and Christian Carroll, a guy who is literally built out of muscle, clearly has all the talent in the world.
Yeah.
Wrestling a guy like Evan Bachmann, who has grinded it out for 4 or 5 years, first at like Cal Bakersfield, Cal Poly, one of the Cal schools. And then transferred to Utah Valley, grinded it out at Utah Valley for 3 years, and then finally gets the opportunity at a high level Division I school. Utah Valley is a Division I school, but a high level school like Iowa State to show what he's really made out of. So you get the dynamic of those two, the uber athlete, raw guy wrestling against the seasoned vet who maybe doesn't have all of the talent in the world. He's very talented. I want to make that clear. Very talented, but not Christian Carroll talented. Yeah. So getting those two wrestling each other, I think, is great for both of them, because then Evan feels what an uber athlete like Christian Carroll is like, because he's going to wrestle some really good athletes at 184.
Yeah.
And then Christian Carroll gets to feel like what it's like to wrestle some of these seasoned vets who are able to take their time, pick their shots, and just be more savvy on the mat. So I think I love that dynamic in the room, and they both wrestled really well in their debuts. I mean, Christian Carroll beat number 13 Nick Stemmet from Stanford. So, I mean, and Christian Carroll's ranked like 33rd or something like that. Like, what was that about? So
I have beef with his ranking, and I don't even want to get into a tangent about it. I just think it's crazy that we saw AJ Ferrari be ranked the number 1 guy at his weight, but Christian Carroll's at the bottom. Like, AJ Ferrari hasn't wrestled that much either. He just happened to win a championship the last time he was on an official roster,
which was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
4 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago.
Whatever. Anyways.
So, yeah. Christian Carroll will get his when he earns it, and he is earning it. So,
and he will. He's showing that he will, because he's a monster.
He is. And an incredible interview. I will say that every time we talked to him after the Stanford dual meet, and he continues to be truly an excellent interview. Like, he will be a team leader in the future. I feel very confident in that.
I'm so glad that these guys are just such great interviews, because I give a lot of credit to wrestlers constantly because they deserve it. They're fantastic. Whether it's Dom Brand speaking gibberish or like David, who used to give us these really philosophical like team speeches, you know. Mm-hmm. But I do think back now to when I started covering the team at least, so like Dresser's early years. Mm-hmm. Ian Parker took a while to become a good interview.
He did. Yeah.
Sam Colbray didn't want to speak more than 5 words at the beginning. So like,
yeah. Same with Marcus Coleman. Getting an interview out of Marcus Coleman in those early years was like pulling teeth. He
was always compared to Derek St. John, and St. John said the same thing. He just doesn't love talking to the media, so he just don't love doing interviews. But Marcus kind of had to learn, you become a leader, you kind of have to be able to speak. But Evan, I think, is just such a great interview. Mm-hmm. Leaving media availability today, Ben and I were sitting here chatting with Aiden before we hit record, and I was like, I think Evan Bachmann's my favorite this season. Like, we have our favorites, obviously. Younger Bastida has been this podcast mascot, essentially. And proudly. Obviously, we love Anthony. And obviously love all the guys that are the leaders of the team. And then I always pick one. Mm-hmm. And I pick Evan. Just because I think he's such a fun interview. He's very insightful. You can tell he doesn't really hold anything back. I feel like what you see is what you get.
Yes.
And I love that about him. And I love that he had to work so hard for it, because I think it's almost like you underestimate him, right? And I made that comment to you and Andy. It's like, we've been watching him wrestle for so many years, but we've just overlooked it because he was just another name on the list for Iowa State to wrestle. Well, now he's in the room. And I loved how he talked about being nervous on Friday. That's a very normal thing. Mm-hmm. He's been on the other side of it. He's been in the other singlet. Now he got to walk out of the tunnel, and he did a really good job. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited for Evan, just because I think I'm emotionally driven. He has a great personality, and fun thing we can talk about because it's relevant to some of the issues Iowa State is having. Evan Bachmann wrestled at 197. He said that coach told him, like, no, you're 184. And honestly, coach is right.
Yes,
right? He's a short guy.
He's short.
And so Evan talked about the struggle of dropping a weight. It's a very difficult thing. It is. Like, just normal people struggle to lose 10 pounds, 5 pounds.
Yep.
Well, imagine an athlete. And so if you go back and watch the interview, he gives a lot of insight into just, he's doing a lot more cardio. He's not lifting necessarily as much as he was when he was 197. And then talked about, knowing when to leave the table when he's eating. So don't overeat.
Yep.
But I loved it just how he talked about it, because you can tell that it's hard and it's a lot of work, which he said, but it's work that he almost looks like he's enjoying.
He's very excited about it. I think that's accurate. I think he's very excited to do the work.
And so that's exactly what you want. You want a wrestler who you can go to and say, nope, I think you're going to be better at this weight, because it's going to be better for you and it's going to be better for the team. Because what do you do if he doesn't, right? You have Christian Carroll at 197. And for him to just take it and be like, yep, you're right. Okay, I'm going to go do it. And to just like smile through this really difficult thing, I think is really awesome. I think it's like role model behavior for a lot of those young guys to see it in a healthy way, to see someone like enjoying it. I'm sure he's not always enjoying it when he has to run.
Yep.
It sounds like a lot more than he's usually ran in the past. But I think it just shows his commitment as an athlete. And it's his last season, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So it just shows his commitment to his craft. And I love that about him.
Yep. And like you said, it's great for the young guys to see. Speaking of Evan Bachmann, Evan Frost, it's great for a guy like Evan Frost to see. We have to talk about him.
Yes.
Last year, Evan Frost was the model of consistency for Iowa State throughout the season. Jackie and I both talked about it. This season has started off as not such for Evan Frost, unfortunately. Dresser said on Friday and reiterated again today that Evan Frost did not manage his weight good at all or well at all. He got up, sounds like pretty high. Dresser didn't say a number during the week. And Dresser knew he wasn't going to wrestle Evan Frost. He's like, he either won't make weight or the guy who does make weight won't be able to wrestle. He knew he wouldn't be able to make weight. So he knew he wouldn't wrestle him. So what does Dresser do? he makes him make weight and then doesn't let him wrestle. So Evan Frost had to get down to 133 before the Stanford dual meet, and his reward for doing such was not wrestling. And Dresser even said, which I was surprised hearing this, is like the guy, Evan Frost, the guy who made weight on Friday, would have wrestled. If he would have wrestled that match, he would have gotten sent to the hospital. Like, I don't know what that weight cut was like for him. It sounds like it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So, and then this week, I mean, we get there. Normally our media interviews are done in the team room, the lounge area. We got there today and the backdrop and everything is set out outside of the wrestling room. And we're like, what's going on? And it sounds like they were doing weigh-ins for everybody in the team room.
Yeah.
So I think there's more than a few guys who maybe mismanaged their weight or didn't take their weight as seriously as maybe they should have. And like, there are guys dropping weight too. Like Casey Swiderski is dropping down a weight class. MJ Gaitan is dropping down a weight class. Panero Johnson's going up a weight class. Like, there's different guys managing different weights for different reasons. So like, I get that on one hand, but also it's like, okay, I think Dresser is sending a pretty clear message right now of A, the results on Friday were not acceptable, and B, to make sure that they will be acceptable in the future, we will all manage our weight correctly.
Yep. And he also mentioned that they've been practicing all weekend.
Yes. Yep.
They haven't had a break yet. Their break comes on Wednesday. Usually when we get there on Tuesdays, they've had Monday kind of off, right?
Yep.
Is Monday the off day?
So my understanding is the day after the dual meet, whenever that is. So if it's a Friday dual, Saturday would be the off day. Then Sunday, slow day. Maybe Monday start getting back into it. And then Tuesdays is always the hard day. So we always get them on the hard day.
Yeah. So, and he said they haven't taken a break yet. So, and I love that about Dresser because I think for a while, you know, looking back at last season, you have a really consistent lineup. They were very much powering through, like you had your lineup set and you were getting through it. Right. So there wasn't a lot of discussion around guys not doing the right thing. And so I think it's nice to kind of see that, like, he won't say it, but you know he was mad.
Oh, yeah.
And you know he's giving them a hard week, which they deserve it. They deserve it. I mean, like we said, you shouldn't have lost that duel.
Yeah.
But,
and make things hard now before March.
Yes.
Like, right now is the time to make things really hard for these guys.
and you have Iowa in a few weeks, or not in a few weeks, next week. Sorry, correction. So like, yeah, I love seeing this side of Dresser just in that, like, let's not forget who Kevin Dresser is as a coach. You know, he's a tough guy. He doesn't like to lose. Who likes to lose?
Yeah.
So I enjoyed seeing that. You can go watch the video for yourselves. Still very level-headed, still very rational guy, but just from the years of covering him, you just know that Friday he was not happy.
Yeah. He was seething. Calm on the outside, but he was seething.
Yeah, I mean, you did the interview with him.
Yeah. So
I'm excited. So Iowa State's going to wrestle Navy on Friday, and it sounds like the Grandview Open.
Yep, they're doing both. It sounds like most guys will be doing so it sounds like most starters will just be doing Navy, but he did mention a few guys who will probably be doing both. Adrian Meza at 125 will likely be doing both. And then he also mentioned, oh gosh, who else did he mention as guys doing both? Some of the younger guys. I think he mentioned MJ Gaitan could be doing both.
Yep.
Herrera's doing both. Yep. I think that was it. I think those three are the guys that'd be pulling double duty. It sounds like Younger Bastida could be back competing this weekend. It sounds like it wouldn't be against Navy. So I would imagine if Younger Bastida does compete this weekend, it's going down to the Grandview Open, beating a D2 or NAI wrestler really badly, and then forfeiting out of the tournament. So essentially something just to get him on the mat, just to get him wrestling someone not an Iowa State singlet and saying, all right, I'm good to go. I'm ready to wrestle Ben Keeter next week. So I think Navy should not be a competitive dual meet. They have one very good wrestler. I will give them a ton of credit for 141. They're Josh Coderhant. He will, if Casey is ready, he'll be wrestling Casey Swiderski at 141. So that will be the marquee matchup if it happens, if Casey's ready to go. I hope he is. I hope Casey's weight is down because remember, he started at 149. This is not Casey is not in the Evan Frost situation where Evan knew he's at 133 and just didn't manage his weight. Casey's dropping a weight. So you want to make sure that's being done right. So if Casey's ready to go, I hope he is, just so we can see that match. Because besides that, Iowa State should probably be favored in most other matches, depending on if there's backups wrestling or not. But yeah, that's what I have to say about Navy, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those where I hate saying it like this, but we say it all the time in wrestling, right? Like if you're going to be a guy who's going to go in and lose, then at least don't lose by bonus points. Would I like to see anyone lose? No. I would like to see Iowa State bounce back. I would like to see these guys who now have one under their belt maybe be more comfortable, see how they were bounce back after a loss. Dresser did say that their plan is it would be Herrera, I always butcher their last name, Noctaborn, Kane, and then Meza would be redshirted.
Yes, ideally. Yep.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. They got to make the best of what few matches they get before they can't wrestle anymore. So I think, it's just seeing those young guys respond to a loss and clearly an ass whooping in practice. So, and then, seeing what guys get thrown back in there. Panero Johnson Saturday should get some matches.
Yeah. Dresser said he's out of gambling jail. So hopefully he's back out there in some capacity. I'd like to see him against Navy, but if he wrestles at Grandview, I get it.
I'm excited to see Panero back.
Yeah, me too.
He was
a lot of fun to watch.
I'm excited to see his spark get back out there. I know it was a really tough time for him, and I'm just excited to see him back in action. And like we've said, conversation changes as of Monday.
Yep.
And then it's suddenly Cy-Hawk week, and suddenly that lineup's going to look really freaking different.
Yep.
And I am very excited because it's in Iowa City. I have not been shy to admit that the environment in Carver Hawkeye is just incredible.
Yep.
It's just an incredible experience. I'm so excited to be in it. And I'm excited that there's no expectations. Like the expectation is to always beat Iowa, but I'm excited that we're going into this a little differently after last year. So
yeah. I also Iowa's lineup is, it's good. They bought a lot of guys, but they lost more than a few matches to Stanford too. So I think it's going to be pretty competitive. And I think the weights where Iowa's really good is 149, Kyle Parko. I like Casey Swiderski quite a bit, or Anthony Echemendia quite a bit. At 149, I realized that Casey's at 141 this year. They switched this year, and it's going to take me a little bit to get used to it.
It's taken me a lot to get used to seeing Parko in a Hawkeye singlet.
Yeah.
Breaks my heart.
Yeah. I hope MJ is ready to go by Cy-Hawk because I'd love to see him go against Michael Caliendo because Michael Caliendo was taken to the brink by Hunter Garvin from Stanford, who is an Iowa City kid. I think he wrestled Iowa City West. So there's just, again, we're not talking about Cy-Hawk right now.
No, we'll get into the weeds next week.
I think there's a lot of really intriguing matches up and down that board that's all right, this could shape up to be really, really fun. So
yeah, it's
but Navy first.
Yeah, we'll get through Navy. We'll see how the guys compete at the Grandview Open. See how everyone's feeling next week when we talk to the team. Hopefully we get some positive news about Younger feeling good and, Casey being at his weight and being ready to go. And I'm very curious to see who goes at 125 against Iowa. Coach basically said it's what did he call it? A three-way. And then he said a three-way or a horse race.
3-horse race. Yeah.
So I am curious to see who comes out on top there. This is Kyson Terakina's last season.
Yep.
So
and he'll be competing against Osmani Diversent. I don't know how to pronounce his last name yet. I'll get that at some point. And then Adrian Meza, who Dresser did say they'd like to redshirt. So I think it's really just Kyson and Osmani.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm with you. That's gonna be really interesting to see who wins that wrestle off. Because Kyson's dropping away too. He thought he's gonna be at 133 this year. I don't know why he thought that, but he did. So we'll see what he looks like at 125 again and how he's feeling. But
I think this just might be one of the weirder starts of the season we've had with Iowa State in a while. So it's probably just kind of confusing on what the heck's going on in the lineup, and then like really understanding like who's getting what spots. And it doesn't help that so many guys are moving around. So it's just a weird start to the season that we're not used to.
Yep.
I would say as a whole.
Yep. I would agree with that. And I think we got used to the David Carr era, and everything essentially during that era was just very much set in stone. Like this is what's happening that weight, that's happening this weight. And it's like, oh, cool. Perfect. And one note that I want to mention about Evan Frost again, coach did say he's doing an excellent job this week with his weight. So far, so good with Evan Frost. It seems like he's learned his lesson. So I don't want people to be concerned like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be a season long problem.
No, he'll be fine.
He'll be fine. I think it was just like Dresser said, he's like, in this sport, if you take 2 or 3 days and don't do a good job, you've ruined yourself for a week or two. And I think that's what happened.
I hate saying that. Oh, he's young, because he's still a D1 college athlete, you know, but he is young, and he just came off his first season in the starting lineup.
Yeah. I wasn't All-American.
So, and it was, I don't know that anyone expected it, probably including him.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about it.
Yep.
I really wouldn't, because I think if there was reason to be concerned, I think Dresser would be showing it more and would have spoken about it differently.
And wouldn't have added the fact that he's doing an excellent job with his weight this week. Like,
yeah.
So,
but last thing we haven't touched on, the heavyweights.
Heavyweights.
I love heavyweights, especially in this era.
I'm glad you brought that up. Obviously, we have younger Bastida, who is the greatest heavyweight to ever walk the earth. But since he's been injured, Daniel Herrera, I think, is another of this new era heavyweight that's just super exciting. Isn't ginormous, is athletically built, is a nice way to say it. So I think once Younger does graduate after this year, we're in good, solid hands with Daniel Herrera. But even if Younger does graduate this year, might he get another year like our good friend Gable Stevenson?
But then I walked into the studio and I get a tweet. Someone's like, Gable Stevenson's back. And I'm like, what do you mean? What does that mean?
How is that possible?
Like, I'm like, no way. Like, I don't know what I thought they meant, but I was just like, what do they mean?
Yeah, back in the WWE, is he going to go for another Olympic title in 4 years? Like,
and then we start scrolling Twitter. You know, we go through some sources and we're like, they could be 75% right. And then I get to Minnesota wrestling. Gable Stevenson is indeed back. He gets to do, they like are giving him basically second semester eligibility. So as of January 1st, he'll be allowed to wrestle again.
Yeah, which I don't know how. How did that happen?
So I found someone tweeted this. I don't know if this is true.
Okay.
This is at the GOAT follower. So it sounds like a reliable source.
Okay.
But he said, for those wondering how Gabe is allowed to retroactively take an Olympic red shirt. So his 19, 20, and 22 years count. 21 was a COVID year. 23 was his red shirt year. And 24 was an Olympic red shirt.
Okay.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure his deal with WWE was through NIL, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And that's
he
over.
originally signed that when he was in college.
Yeah.
So,
And when he was on the Bills, he doesn't forfeit any of his college wrestling
right. Eligibility.
Yeah. So confusing, but it does kind of make sense on how they maneuvered it, I guess.
Yeah. It's the COVID year that throws you for the loop every time. Like it does for me.
I want to see Younger healthy. I want to see Younger in a live, tough match. So Iowa, that's going to be really it before they head into like Cliff Keen and all those. But I don't love it. I love Gable. I've always been a huge fan of his. I own the Olympic like t-shirt actually that Barcel made. Sorry, trigger warning. Where it had has the score of his gold medal match on the front and the back of when he flipped the result. But I don't love that he's coming back to college. It's kind of one of those your era's over.
Yeah.
You did the thing.
You're going to go make millions in WWE now, which unfortunately did not work out.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, he got cut.
So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
And, he gets to come back. He's obviously not coming back for free.
Nope.
So
I'm sure they're paying him. And I'm with Jackie. I like Gable quite a bit. He's a very fun wrestler. I'm glad he's with Minnesota because last year at this time he was teasing going to Iowa.
Oh, I would have hated that.
At least he's at Minnesota. It'll make, I'm sure Tom Brandt and Cale Sanderson are pissed.
Yeah.
Because you have Greg Kirkfleet and Ben Keeter, who Greg Kirkfleet we know is really, really good at wrestling. Really good. Ben Keeter's freshman, supposed to be really good at wrestling. And then you suddenly get Gable Stevenson, Olympic gold medalist, back in your weight class. Like, what is this? And like Greg Kirkfleet might give Gable a run for his money. We'll see. Younger Bastida might give Gable a run for his money. We'll see. But like those two definitely have to deal with him for sure at Big Tens and maybe during other parts of the season too. So
don't forget about Wyatt Hendrickson.
And Wyatt Hendrickson.
He's at Oklahoma State.
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. So David Taylor and Wyatt are probably pissed right now too.
Yeah. So
it just kind of shakes up the
landscape.
Shakes up the heavyweight in a way I don't think any of us wanted.
What's wrestling? What's the season of wrestling without drama? Right? Like we always have drama somehow. And this year it's Gable Stevenson coming back.
It's Gable Stevenson coming back. AJ Ferrari finally found a place to take him.
Yeah. Well, for now, I'm still not convinced he'll be there by the end of the year, but
interesting.
I mean, his track record says that he won't last more than a month, but so far he's doing all right, it seems like. So
I don't know if it's a hot take, but a take to end the pod, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot going on in college wrestling. And like I said, just a weird start to the season. Monday, or I shouldn't say Monday. On Tuesday, when we sit down to record this podcast, we'll be having very different conversation. And I'm very curious what conversation we'll be having, but we'll be able to deep dive into things. Like we've said, Iowa's not the same Iowa we've seen just because, they went and bought some guys. And some of them are familiar faces like Stephen Buchanan, who was at Oklahoma and Wyoming. Yeah. Kyle Parko, if you're not familiar, he was at Arizona State.
Same with Teamer.
I was going to say Ja'Cory Teamer was also at Arizona State. It's a weird time, honestly, now that I'm sitting here and we're talking about it. But I'm excited. I love wrestling, of course. So you just go with it. You just go with it. And Iowa State, overall, I'm not too worried.
No.
So.
Nope.
Final thoughts?
Excited to see who does actually wrestle against Navy. Is it going to be another backup late in lineup, or are guys ready to get going and put their feet to the fire and get going in wrestling dual meets? So,
we'll see. Friday night, Hilton, 7 p.m.
Yep.
So get tickets, go, do the things. We'll be back next week to preview the Cyhawk and talk about how Iowa State performed over the weekend. And as always, shout out to Fareway, our sponsor, who has been a fearless sponsor of ours since like the beginning.
Since the beginning. So they took a chance on us.
Yeah. Go get your groceries. Go get your meat for this weekend. You have a long day of tailgating on Saturday with a 7 p.m. p.m. kick against Cincinnati. Fareway's the best place to go. I love going to their meat market. Yeah. That's where I go.
Yep.
You don't even have to pay me to say that. I truly go there. So, thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back next week.